Today, we're going to install the Airlift Smartlift 2 with coils on my 2012 Chevy Suburban. They say there's a little engineering involved. Let's see how bad it is. Okay, all right, here's what we've done so far. We've got the wire coming out of the tube, coming out here over the exhaust, and that runs up to a couple of Ys right here. If you can see these, one of them's going to go back to the back bumper for manual inflation. The other one will tuck up here and secure like so. We'll put a little wire tie right there. This one will run over the frame, out along the outside of the frame to the pump, which we're going to start mounting here in just a second. Alright, so what I'm going to try to do without turning up my bumper too bad, I'm going to drill a hole right here so I have my manual air inlet, and the tube comes right up behind it. There's a service or access point right there. So let's see how this goes. So we need to mount this piece to the frame somewhere, and then this piece is designed to go on a leaf spring, and it holds the magnet that corresponds with this line to raise or lower the vehicle. Because we don't have a leaf spring, obviously this is where the engineering comes in. So what I'm going to do is cut another one of these brackets, maybe a little wider, that will straddle this bolt on that side and give me this stanchion. It'll clamp in there, hopefully nice and secure. I'll probably make it a little long and put another bolt through the bottom, and that will give me the ability to put that magnet kind of wherever I need to, and hopefully, fingers crossed, will be all the engineering needed. So after a little bit of looking and a little bit of CAD, cardboard aided drafting, this will turn into a metal bracket that will fit behind here. So it'll slip down over this bolt. This will be grooved. It'll slide down. And there'll be a piece on this side and a piece on this side that comes down to a small bolt hole here. And this slide down fits in place. Firm. It will secure and keep it from walking by this brake line holder. And then we'll have two pieces or one piece of metal with a slot that'll come up and hold the magnet in place. So it's the right elevation for this that'll fit up behind in there. So now the easy part is transferring this to metal. Plate's made, and if it fits, should slide over this, and this little bolt for the brake assembly go in here, and screw in just like that. Perfect. So now when that's tight, very little slop or play. So that'll tighten down and keep it from rotating. And this piece we'll need to mount in here somewhere, but it says we need 1 inch to 1.5 inches of clearance, and that ain't quite 1.5 inches. So we're gonna have to step this back a little bit. So, and I like this to be up a little higher. It's probably something like that. All right, so let's go step this just a smidge. Got the bracket built. it's mounted, secured. This little bolt down here goes through the bottom to keep it from rotating. We've got our gauge sensor mounted, plugged in, and now we have our magnet also mounted. So I'm going to go ahead and put some more pressure on the axle, lift the car up, and see if we can't get it to raise. Okay, day 2. We played till late in the evening, but I had to take everything down to get the garage door shut, and then we drank a little too much whiskey. So where we're at, I've got the tires back on, vehicle's outside, and it works okay. Airlift says that it should be able to inflate to 5 pounds, and then when you take or you inflate it manually to 5 pounds using the little valve that comes with the airbags, and then when you relieve that 5 pounds, it should come back up to stock height. What I'm finding is I can sit in the back of the vehicle, it'll inflate, but when I get out of the vehicle, it doesn't deflate. So really it can range from anywhere from 0 to 10 pounds, but it's not keeping a consistent 5. So what I think is happening is I built this bracket at about 1 inch away from the sensor. It recommends it being 1.5 inches, 1 inch to 1.5 inches away from the magnet. So I think I have not put this bracket far enough back, and I'm getting too much flux from this magnet to the sensors, and it's not as accurate. So I'm going to go ahead, take the wheel off, take this bracket back off, and bend it back another 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch or so, and see if it becomes more accurate. It might just be that the airbags themselves are not sensitive enough with height, like a traditional airbag that would be bolted on the back of an axle, to perform what I want. Because they inflate inside of that spring, and they kind of use the sidewalls of the spring to inflate to full capacity, and the lift and lower is not designed the same, I might not get the accuracy that I'm looking for. As of now, it works, I would say, good enough for heavier loads, but it's not going to be sensitive for, you know, 2 or 3 people getting into the rear seats. Like I say, if I sit on the tailgate, or me and my son sit on the tailgate, it will come up and lower, but it's just not going to keep that 5 pounds of PSI in the system at all times. So, like I say, we'll see if this makes it more accurate. If not, then we'll roll with it as good enough. So I'm going to suit up and put on some overalls, jack this thing up, get this back tire off, and see if we can make some more detailed adjustments. So this is where we're at. I've gone ahead and bent this angle a little bit more, bringing this out so it's about 1.25 inches away. It's kind of hard to tell in the video, but when me and 2 of my kids sat in it, it did react correctly. But when I sit in it by myself, it goes up, but it doesn't seem to be enough to deflate. So it will range from anywhere from about 5 to 20 pounds of pressure, depending on how much load was initially induced and then taken out. So I weigh about 185 pounds. When I get in it, it'll inflate, but when I get out, it doesn't deflate. And I think that's just the way these bags are and kind of the way they're set up. It doesn't really have enough weight, and the way the bags inflate aren't like a traditional airbag because they're kind of that coil spring helper, so it's just not quite as accurate. It's going to work for my needs, which is, you know, the trailer has quite a bit of tongue weight. We use a camp trailer that has a deck on the front, so we weight that down. We also weight the back of the Suburban down, so it should overcome those loads. Probably going to take more PSI. I would imagine we're going to be 65, 75 PSI to make that work, but I think it's okay. So let's do a quick overview of how everything was installed, and we'll wrap this up. Okay, so the overview is, we start with where we're tied in for the ignition. So this sits under this box. The second 10 amp fuse up is an ignition source, so we tapped into the non-fuse side. That runs up to this 3 amp fuse, and I did go ahead and label it Airlift so we can find it later. That runs up here across to the firewall to the ground. This is supposed to go to the battery, but I didn't like the idea, so I just stuck it on the frame. So that comes back up and around to kind of my service loop, where I've tucked all the extra wire down here as opposed to taking the time to cut it and solder it back together. And comes back up to the battery here, also labeled with Airlift so we know. And there's a small, I think 15 amp fuse in here. That then runs down the frame to the air compressor, which is here. Wait for the camera to adjust. I mounted that on this frame ID tag, vehicle ID tag. It sits right here. All of those run into little metal anchor points. There's my dump valve. And then all of that wire harness runs all the way back. That, and of course the air. That runs up under the frame, under this fascia, to the harness that runs back up around into this sensor. Of course, there's the bracket I made, and then the air lines install just like they would on anything else. So overall, this project wasn't too bad. I would definitely rate putting these together a 3.75 out of 5 stars as far as performance goes. If there's any major updates or performance differences, I'll put a second video out with maybe a little bit of an update. But yeah, it's not bad. I think it's going to work for our needs, and it should work great with the trailer and heavier loads. It's just not going to be as, the adjustments won't be as incremental as I was hoping for. I'll be very curious to see what happens when we put 4 people in the vehicle and go for a drive, if it just continues to inflate or if it does in fact level the ride as it's supposed to. I know it won't level while driving, but I'm curious to see if it straightens out or kind of levels out as it progresses. So would I do it again? Yes. Do I think it was worth the $500 invested? Maybe. Should I have gone with the remote control version? Yeah, probably. I just didn't want to fiddle with it, forget about it. So I think it'll suit our needs pretty well. So anyway, thanks for watching. See you on the next video.